The Recognitions is a 1955 postmodern novel by William Gaddis, this being his first novel. It initially received mostly poor reviews by critics, many of which containing numerous factual errors, some being directly lifted from others' reviews, and some reviewers straight up admitting they didn't read the book. All of this being chronicled in Jack Green's very entertaining book, Fire the Bastards. However, after the years have gone on, the critical consensus has mostly changed, and the book is now acknowledged as being one of the best novels to come out of that time period, and sometimes in general. It is also probably my favorite book, and I will try to explain why in this review. The book, being around 950 pages, has a lengthy and convoluted plot, following many different threads and characters. The first of the two major plotlines throughout the book follows Wyatt Guyon, the son of a Calvinist reverend, who grows up being quite emotionally repressed due to his extremely religious caregivers. He eventually decides to pursue painting, but after several failures to become more successful, he gets a Faustian deal from the art collector Rectal Brown. Yes, this is actually what he's named. To forge the works of Renaissance-era Dutch and Flemish painters, which he accepts. The rest of his plot throughout the rest of the novel deals with his work in this field and his moral struggles with it. The other main plotline of the book follows Otto, a writer, and a large cast of his friends and acquaintances in New York City, specifically Greenwich Village, and their experiences throughout. This section doesn't have as much of a through line as the other half of the novel and is more loosely plotted, but equally well done in my opinion. The two halves of the novel do intersect at major points, but they're mostly separate, which I think works personally. There are also numerous plotlines following other characters separate from the Wyatt and Greenwich Village plotlines, also all being very well written and entertaining. The book is almost never dull to read through. The only real exception to this in my opinion are the two lengthy party scenes about midway through the book. And either the beginning, middle, or end outshines the rest to me. This is not to say the book doesn't have an effective narrative arc, though. Even with how loose the plotting can be, it still feels like it's building to an effective climax at the end. The novel is written in a unique style, similar to a lot of other postmodern authors, i.e. Thomas Pynchon, David Foster Wallace, Joseph Heller, etc., although this novel predated almost all of those, likely inspiring many of them. The prose is incredibly written, pretty much always being stunning to read through. It's really hard to write about why certain prose styles work and others don't, but just trust me that this does. The dialogue is also incredibly written, taking up much more of the novel than most. Similarly to Ulysses by James Joyce, the dialogue uses em-dashes for this sort of dialogue rather than quotation marks, which doesn't make it much harder to read compared to what you'd expect. The book is always very clear when it comes to denoting what's dialogue and what's prose. The book is quite difficult to understand at points, so the challenge of it is a little overblown. Definitely don't come into this expecting a breezy read, though. But if what you're wanting is a challenging, beautifully written book, I would highly recommend it. It also isn't the sort of book where you really can't get anything out of it if you're not understanding the literal events. Even if parts of it are basically complete nonsense to you, it's still incredible to read through solely because of the quality of the dialogue and prose. The major theme throughout the novel is fakery, in various ways. The most obvious is that Wyatt spends most of the book forging paintings by famous artists. Numerous other characters throughout also engage in forms of counterfeiting, though, such as Otto, who steals other people's discussions for his play, and Frank Sinistera, who counterfeits money. This all ties into the novel's core message, which is mainly that modern society is terrible, and that authenticity is sorely missing from the world today. This leads into some of his other major questions throughout the novel, such as what constitutes originality to begin with, which are expanded on quite interestingly throughout the book. I won't spoil too much more of the main themes of the book, but they are presented well and examined engagingly, being consistently thought-provoking throughout. The characters of the novel are often not terribly developed, particularly the side characters, often being more so caricatures than true characters. This doesn't apply to all of them, most of the main characters develop a fair bit, but I figure this is something I should warn about. However, this sort of character writing works phenomenally for the book, which is much more a novel of ideas than of plot or characters. The most developed characters are also very well written, and feel, if not necessarily like real people, then at least real enough for what the book is trying to do. The characters are consistently very entertaining to follow, as well as often being very funny and offering insightful commentary on the sorts of people the book criticizes. If you're looking for very complex characters, this is probably not the book for you, but the characters there are incredibly well done for what the novel is trying to do. Overall, The Recognitions is an excellent book, featuring both a great plot, incredible prose and dialogue, interesting themes, and entertaining characters. Apart from minor pacing issues near the middle, it's a near-perfect book, and very underrated even now. I would highly recommend it to fans of other experimental or postmodern works. It is a great read. Thanks for watching.